In the scorching deserts of Egypt, beneath thousands of years of sand and silence, lay a secret that would shake the world. November 4th, 1922. British archaeologist Howard Carter stood at the entrance of a hidden tomb in the Valley of the Kings. His hands trembled as he peered through a small hole into the darkness. When his sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, asked what he could see, Carter whispered words that would echo through history: wonderful things everywhere. But what they discovered that day would bring more than just treasure. It would unleash what many believe to be an ancient curse that has claimed lives for over a century. This is the story of King Tutankhamun, the boy who became a pharaoh at 9 years old, died mysteriously at 19, and whose curse may still be hunting those who disturb his eternal rest. King Tutankhamun was born around 1341 BC during one of the most turbulent periods in Egyptian history. His father was the controversial Pharaoh Akhenaten, the heretic king who tried to replace Egypt's thousands of gods with just one, the sun disk Aten. When Tutankhamun was just a child, probably around 8 or 9 years old, his father died under mysterious circumstances. Egypt was in chaos. The priests were angry, the people were confused, and the empire was weak. Young Tutankhamun was thrust onto the throne, given responsibilities that would crush most adults. He was surrounded by powerful advisors, including the cunning vizier Ai and the ambitious General Hormheb. These men essentially controlled Egypt while the boy king sat on the golden throne, a puppet in elaborate royal clothing. But Tutankhamun's reign would be cut devastatingly short, and the mystery of his death would haunt historians for 3,000 years. During his short 10-year reign, Tutankhamun worked to restore the old religious order that his father had destroyed. He moved the capital back to Thebes and reopened the temples of Ammonius and other traditional gods. The priests regained their power, and Egypt slowly began to stabilize. At around age 12, Tutankhamun married his half-sister Ankhesenamun, who was probably only 13 herself. This was common practice in royal families, meant to keep bloodlines pure and power concentrated. Historical records suggest they loved each other deeply, which was somewhat unusual for arranged royal marriages. Tutankhamun commissioned beautiful artwork showing them together in tender moments, something previous pharaohs rarely did. But tragedy stalked this young couple. Ankhesenamun gave birth twice, and both babies were stillborn, their tiny mummified bodies later found in Tutankhamun's tomb. The genetic consequences of royal inbreeding were taking their toll. Medical examinations of Tutankhamun's mummy revealed he suffered from multiple genetic disorders, a clubfoot, and bone disease. He walked with a cane, and over 100 walking sticks were found in his tomb. Then, around 1323 BC, when Tutankhamun was just 19 years old, something happened. The historical record goes silent. No detailed account of his death exists. One day the young pharaoh was alive, and the next, Egypt was preparing for his funeral. The suddenness shocked the kingdom. Preparation for a pharaoh's tomb usually took decades, but Tutankhamun's burial was rushed, completed in just 70 days. This suggests his death was completely unexpected. Theories have multiplied over the centuries. Was it murder? His skull showed damage that some interpreted as a fatal blow. Was it a chariot accident? His ribs were broken. Was it infection from his clubfoot? Medical evidence suggests gangrene. Or was it complications from malaria, which his mummy tested positive for? The truth is, we may never know for certain. What we do know is that powerful men stood to gain from his death. Within months, his elderly advisor, I married the widowed Ankhesenamun and took the throne. Then General Hormheb seized power and tried to erase Tutankhamun from history entirely, removing his name from official records. The boy king who should have been forgotten was buried with unimaginable treasures and sealed away in a small, hastily prepared tomb. For over 3,000 years, Tutankhamun slept undisturbed while the world above changed beyond recognition. Empires rose and fell. Egypt itself was conquered by Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Ottomans. The Valley of the Kings was plundered by tomb robbers who found and stripped nearly every other royal burial. But Tutankhamun's tomb remained hidden, buried under debris from later construction. By the early 1900s, most archaeologists believed the valley held no more secrets. But Howard Carter refused to give up. Funded by the wealthy Lord Carnarvon, Carter spent 6 frustrating years finding nothing. In 1922, Carnarvon was ready to quit. He gave Carter one final season. On November 4th, just days into this last attempt, a water boy working with Carter's team accidentally discovered a stone step buried in the sand. Carter's heart must have raced as his workers carefully excavated. One step became 12, revealing a sealed doorway bearing the royal seals of the necropolis. But whose tomb was it? The next day, they found the answer: cartouches bearing the name Tutankhamun, a pharaoh so obscure that most scholars had barely heard of him. Carter sent an urgent telegram to Lord Carnarvon in England. It took 2 weeks for Carnarvon and his daughter Lady Evelyn to arrive in Egypt. The tension during those weeks must have been unbearable. Had tomb robbers already found what lay beyond? On November 26th, with witnesses present, Carter made a small hole in the doorway and held up a candle. The flame flickered from ancient air that hadn't moved in millennia. What he saw took his breath away. The antechamber was piled wall to wall with treasures. Golden couches shaped like animals, chariots, weapons, furniture, statues, and countless other objects glinting in the candlelight. But this was just the beginning. It took Carter and his team nearly 10 years to catalog and remove over 5,000 objects from the tomb's 4 rooms. The burial chamber itself contained 4 golden shrines nested inside each other like Russian dolls, and within them, a stone sarcophagus. Inside there were 3 coffins, the innermost made of solid gold weighing over 200 pounds. And finally, there was Tutankhamun himself, his mummy adorned with a golden death mask that has become the most recognizable artifact from ancient Egypt. The discovery made headlines worldwide and sparked Egyptomania that continues today. The newspapers loved a good story, and they were about to get one that would sell millions of copies. Just months after the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon traveled to Cairo. In March 1923, he was bitten on the cheek by a mosquito. In his hotel bathroom, he accidentally cut open the bite while shaving. In an era before antibiotics, this minor injury turned deadly. The wound became infected, then septic. Carnarvon developed pneumonia and, on April 5, 1923, died in his hotel room at age 57. Legend says that at the exact moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo mysteriously went out. Back in England, his dog howled and dropped dead. Even stranger, when scientists later unwrapped Tutankhamun's mummy, they found a wound on his left cheek in the exact same location as the mosquito bite that killed Carnarvon. Newspapers exploded with sensational headlines. Pharaoh's curse strikes. The story seemed too perfect to be coincidence. But this was only the first death. Arthur Mace, the American archaeologist who helped Carter open the tomb, died in the same Cairo hotel as Carnarvon just months later. Cause of death? Unknown. The curse had claimed its second victim. The deaths continued with disturbing frequency. George J. Gould, an American railroad magnate who visited the tomb, died of pneumonia months later. Prince Ali Camel Fahmy Bey of Egypt died in a bizarre murder shortly after visiting. Radiologist Archibald Douglas Reed, who x-rayed Tutankhamun's mummy, died of a mysterious illness. Sir Bruce Ingham, who received a paperweight made from a mummified hand from Carter as a gift, saw his house burned down shortly after, then flooded when it was rebuilt. Hugh Evelyn White, an archaeologist who helped excavate the tomb, hanged himself, leaving a note that read, "I have succumbed to a curse." Richard Bethel, Carter's personal secretary, was found dead in his bed in 1929, cause unknown. Bethel's father, Lord Westbury, devastated by his son's death, jumped from his 7th-floor apartment. As his body was being taken to the cemetery, the hearse ran over and killed an 8-year-old boy. By 1929, just 7 years after the tomb's opening, 11 people connected to the discovery were dead. The press kept count. People worldwide believed in the curse. Some claimed that Carter had found an inscription in the tomb that read, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. But was it really a curse? Or could science explain these deaths? Skeptics were quick to point out several facts. First, that supposed curse inscription, it never existed. No such text was found in Tutankhamun's tomb. Second, many people who entered the tomb lived long lives. Howard Carter himself, who spent more time in the tomb than anyone, lived until 1939, dying of lymphoma at age 64, 17 years after the discovery. Dr. Derry, who performed the autopsy on Tutankhamun's mummy, lived until 1961. Lady Evelyn, Lord Carnarvon's daughter who was present at the opening, lived until 1980, dying at age 79. If there was a curse, it seemed to be remarkably selective. Third, statistical analysis shows that the death rate among people who entered the tomb was not significantly higher than the general population for people of similar age and social class in that era. Many of the victims were already elderly or had pre-existing health conditions. Medical experts also noted that Egypt in the 1920s was dangerous for Europeans regardless of curses. Mosquito-borne diseases, contaminated water, and poor sanitation killed many visitors. However, modern science has discovered something genuinely dangerous lurking in ancient tombs that the 1920s researchers couldn't have known about. When archaeologists and microbiologists examined sealed Egyptian tombs in recent decades, they found dangerous pathogens that had survived for thousands of years in the dry, enclosed environment. Deadly molds and fungi, including aspergillus and other toxins, can colonize mummies and tomb walls. When disturbed, these microorganisms become airborne and can be inhaled, causing severe respiratory infections, pneumonia, and in people with weakened immune systems, death. This condition is now called tomb fever, or more scientifically, cave disease. Lord Carnarvon already had weakened lungs from a car accident years before. Arthur Mace was known to be in poor health. These men breathed in ancient air filled with millennia-old biological hazards. In the 1970s, researchers studying King Casimir, IV of Poland's tomb, all fell mysteriously ill. Tests revealed toxic fungi that had survived in the sealed coffin for centuries. Perhaps the curse was actually ancient biology taking revenge on those who disturbed it. Nature created a perfect defense system for the pharaoh's eternal rest. Whether real or imagined, the curse of King Tutankhamun captured the world's imagination and never let go. The 1920s discovery coincided perfectly with Hollywood's golden age, and filmmakers immediately exploited the public's fascination with ancient Egypt and supernatural horror. The 1932 film The Mummy, starring Boris Karloff, was directly inspired by Tutankhamun's curse and established the template for countless mummy movies to follow. The image of a vengeful mummy wrapped in bandages, rising to punish those who disturbed its tomb, became an iconic horror archetype. Books, radio shows, comic books, and later television shows featured cursed Egyptian artifacts and vengeful pharaohs. In the 1960s and 70s, renewed interest in ancient Egypt spawned more mummy films and curse stories. The blockbuster 1999 film The Mummy and its sequels brought the curse legend to a new generation, mixing action, adventure, and horror. Video games like Tomb Raider featured curse elements. Even museums reported strange occurrences when displaying Tutankhamun artifacts. In 1972, when the treasures toured international museums, directors of the Cairo Museum initially refused to allow the golden mask to leave, fearing the curse. The fascination goes beyond entertainment. Tutankhamun's curse has become a case study in how myths develop and persist despite evidence. Psychologists point to several factors. First, confirmation bias. People remember deaths connected to the curse while forgetting people who lived long lives after visiting the tomb. Second, the narrative is compelling. A young king who died mysteriously, fabulous treasure, exotic location, and convenient deaths make for an irresistible story. Third, there's a moral dimension. Many people felt the tomb robbing, even in the name of archaeology, was disrespectful and deserved punishment. The curse represents cosmic justice. Fourth, The mystery appeals to our desire to believe that ancient peoples possessed knowledge and powers we've lost. The idea that Egyptian priests could craft a curse that still works 3,000 years later suggests magic might be real. Finally, there's the fundamental human need to find meaning in tragedy. When Lord Carnarvon died suddenly, calling it a curse was more comforting than accepting it was just bad luck. The curse gives death purpose and pattern. This psychological power ensures that the curse legend will never truly die, regardless of scientific evidence. Today, Tutankhamun's treasures are displayed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, with a new Grand Egyptian Museum set to showcase the complete collection. Modern technology has revealed secrets that Howard Carter never imagined. CT scans and genetic testing have painted a detailed picture of a young king's life and health. We now know he suffered from malaria, bone disease, and had a club foot. His parents were brother and sister, and generations of royal inbreeding left him physically frail. DNA analysis confirmed his father was Akhenaten and identified his mother as one of Akhenaten's sisters, whose mummy was discovered in tomb KV-35. We know his wife Enkhesenemen was his half-sister, daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Their two stillborn daughters were found buried with him, both premature and showing genetic abnormalities. The tragedy of this young royal family, bound by tradition to marry within their own bloodline, is heartbreaking. Despite massive treasures and divine status, they couldn't escape the genetic consequences of their ancestry. But new mysteries continue to emerge. In 2015, radar scans suggested hidden chambers might exist behind the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb. Could this be the lost tomb of Nefertiti? Further testing proved inconclusive, and a mystery remains. Image Prompt 1. Modern CT scanning of Tutankhamun's mummy. High-tech medical equipment. 3D holographic reconstruction showing skeletal issues. Scientists analyzing data on screens. Cutting-edge technology meeting ancient history. The debate over whether Tutankhamun was murdered continues. The broken ribs and possible head injury suggest violence. But these injuries could have occurred during mummification when embalmers handled his body, or even during Carter's 1925 autopsy when they struggled to remove the mask, which had been fused to his mummy by hardened oils. Some historians point to a letter written by Queen Enkhesenemen after Tutankhamun's death. She wrote to the king of the Hittites, Egypt's enemies, saying, "My husband has died, and I have no son. They say you have many sons. If you send me one of your sons, he will become my husband. I will never take one of my servants as a husband." This desperate letter suggests she feared the men surrounding her, likely Ai and Horemheb. The Hittite prince was indeed sent, but he was murdered at the Egyptian border before he could marry Enkhesenemen and claim the throne. Shortly after, the elderly Ai forced Enkhesenemen to marry him. Within 4 years, Ai was dead and Horemheb took power. Enkhesenemen disappeared from all records. Did they murder Tutankhamun to seize power? We may never have proof, but the circumstantial evidence paints a dark picture of palace intrigue and murder. So is there a curse? The rational answer is no. The deaths can be explained by disease, old age, coincidence, and dangerous ancient pathogens. But the legend endures because it speaks to something deeper in human nature: our respect for the dead, our fascination with the mysterious, and our hope that ancient powers still exist in our modern, scientifically explained world. King Tutankhamun, the forgotten boy king who should have been lost to history, became the most famous pharaoh of all because of the treasures in his tomb and the curse associated with them. His golden mask is recognized worldwide, more famous than the faces of far more powerful pharaohs who ruled for decades. In death, the sickly boy who limped through his short reign achieved an immortality that even the greatest conquerors couldn't match. His name echoes through millennia, and his story captivates new generations. Whether you believe in curses or not, one thing is certain: disturbing Tutankhamun's tomb changed the world. It sparked global fascination with ancient Egypt that continues today and reminds us that 3,000 years later, a teenage king still has the power to make us stop, wonder, and ask questions about life, death, and what might lie beyond. The Boy King's curse may be the greatest magic of all. The magic of a story so powerful that it will never die.